We spent the past couple of years in a crazy hot market. Louisville home sales decline as demand outpaces supply. Effective communication is at the core of any situation. If you master these two ideas, you'll have a chance of being successful at residential real estate marketing. I think you need to be looking for investment opportunities that move the needle. The market will never crash if demand exceeds supply. This is what I've been telling you all along.
This is the Jay Pitt Show.
And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitt Show, Talk Radio 1080. Ryan, what's up, man?
Well, not much. Hanging out with you.
You know, I mean, I guess that can be interesting. Maybe, maybe not. I tend to talk a little bit too much.
You're doing good.
Be the best conversationalist. You have to listen also.
I think you have to talk a lot when the show's named after you.
Fair point. Fair point.
So I'm a supporting cast here.
Well, we will see how that goes. Supporting is certainly not. Like, for those of you listening, Ryan plans the episodes. He works really hard to kind of try and make me sound good.
Now anybody that doesn't like the show know they're supposed to yell at me.
Well, that was on purpose. That was on purpose. Shielding blame. You know that thing. That's, again, one of the perks of having your name as the title of the show, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe
that's fair.
So
I can take it.
Speaking of, what do you have planned for us today, Ryan?
Gonna have a good show for you. We'll talk about the Louisville real estate market here in the beginning, like we normally do. We have a question from an agent, story from the field. We're actually going to get into the SVB bank collapse. Going to talk about Biden's first veto he used, and then we'll get into some sports stuff, World Baseball Classic, March Madness, Masters, great time of the year for sports. And then we're going to talk about something relative to your brokers that we'll keep a secret, but okay. I'm more excited for that last segment out of any of these. So.
All right. Sounds like a good plan, man. So where we starting? Real estate market?
Yeah, let's hear about the Louisville real estate market right now.
Well, it continues to be a bit of a mystery. I mean, I think we know the trends, right? We know where things are going. But, as we study the market, like, we're seeing kind of a little bit more of the same. We've reported to you versus, this past week in real estate versus 2022 versus 2021 versus 20 versus 19. I track all of those. Truthfully, I mean, we finally saw the market tip over, right, in terms of closed sales versus 2020 since we talked to you last. So right now we're 6 closed sales behind 2020 year to date, same time frames. We are still substantially ahead, 261 sales to be exact, ahead of where we were in 2019. I've said every single week that we've recorded the show that 2019 was the most normal, air quotes, normal market that we've seen in a long time. We are only, maybe to some surprise, 200 sales, 195 to be exact, behind 21, which a lot of people think was the best market we've ever had. A lot of people think that. Actually, I think for the best agents, for the best brokerages, 22 actually surpassed, despite the last 6 months of 22 being slightly slower. We are now 600 sales through almost 3 months. We are 601 sales behind where we were in 2022.
Wow.
Which is pretty incredible when you think of it. We are 700 pending sales behind, which is a little bit of a different characteristic. Not every pending sale closes, so it's not like, a comp, if you will. It's not something that's set in stone, but there is something to be learned from it. We are also 352 new listings to market behind 22. Interestingly enough, you go back to that like pre-COVID 2020, we are 943 new listings to market behind where we were this time in 2020. Now, we're pretty much at the point where COVID was starting to be a thing, March 20th-ish, in that vicinity, March 23rd, 25th, whatever date you're listening to this. My point is, that was a market that was trending towards normal. We had been short of inventory for a long time, 3 months supply. It was trending towards a balanced market, maybe even a correction. That was back in the days when pre-COVID, we would talk about how long it's been since the Dow had a 10% correction, historically long periods of time. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a long time. That was a lot of the financial news we were hearing. Not a lot of inventory, but heading towards it. We had a lot of houses get listed. right, to balance supply and demand in that first 3 months or 2.5 months of 2020. And then everything changed. And now here we are at the lowest levels of inventory, probably of saleable properties that we've ever seen.
You know, I don't look at any of these stats before you give them to me. So I want to hear these for the first time every time we do this show, and I think it's worked well. And what shocked me about that this week is I've really noticed the team and the brokerage bringing in a ton of listings right now, up on the big whiteboard in there. Listings we're about to put on the market. So I'm kind of shocked to hear that about the listings when I see the team and brokerage. Seems like they're really about to produce a lot of listings.
It is crazy, and they have. It's seasonality to an extent, right? It is seasonality to an extent. Our team is not representative of the market. We exceed. We get what I call better than our fair share, right? So it's hard to look at that and let that be your only input for analysis of the market, because most people are really down. If you look at the numbers that we put out from Business First, the list from last week, we were number 6 in the city, number 2 in per agent productivity behind a local Sotheby's franchise. They have, lots fewer transactions, but way more volume because they're on luxury. We've all known that the last several years have brought very good luxury markets. They also had one of the biggest year-over-year declines in production, and would probably expect that to be this year as well, with luxury market being a little more stale. All that said, we as a company outperform most. So you can't just look at us. You have to look at, we're climbing. We're one of the only companies in the top 10 that increased year over year from 21 to 22. And, I don't know that we'll continue that trend in 23, but it's looking like a pretty good year. Also, we're looking at 15% less inventory than last year, new to market. It's hard to sell houses when you don't have anything to sell.
Yeah.
So
same story, low inventory and just trying to find more.
All the same high points.
Gotcha.
All the same high points.
All right. What else? Let's do story from the field now. So
yeah.
This agent said, I have a listing. A buyer's agent wrote an offer for $20,000 over the list price and removed the appraisal contingency. Big surprise. The appraisal came in exactly for the list price. Now the buyer wants my seller to lower the price because she doesn't have the money to pay the difference. The seller is, because the buyer wrote an offer that she knew she couldn't follow through with if the appraisal came in low. Now the buyer's agent sent me a release and wants the buyer to keep the earnest money deposit. Am I crazy here, or what's going on?
This is an unfortunate circumstance, as we find in real estate with contracts and people that have license and autonomy to make good or bad decisions. Right? These are adults, presumably grown adults with the ability to handle disappointment. But unfortunately, the contract really is pretty clear here. When the seller accepted the offer of $20,000 over without any preset or pre-negotiated verbiage that allows or provides for what happens when this exact occurrence happens, then the buyer has the ability to walk. There are 3 things that a buyer can do, or buyer and seller can do. 3 options. The price can be renegotiated, to be, something less than was originally agreed upon, presumably above the appraisal or at the appraisal. That can look like, I guess I should say 2 things, because really you can move forward at the existing price with the buyer paying. That's obviously an option. Okay. The other 2 things that can happen is, pretty simply put, if a price can't be agreed upon, both parties walk away. Okay. With a refund of the earnest money to the buyer, given that situation, or some sort of negotiation can happen, and it can go all the way down to the appraisal price. It can, be $5 less than the originally paid price, but that requires a renegotiation and participation by both parties. So unfortunately, you accepted an offer where the buyer couldn't perform if an unexpected contingency came to fruition. Really, the law is pretty clear here because, and I'm not an attorney, I must disclaim that, but the law is pretty clear here where no transaction at all is less damaging than a bad transaction. So the buyer is typically given the favor. They're allowed to get out. They're probably going to get their deposit back. And the seller can continue to pursue selling the property for market value to someone else.
Yeah. When I read this, my first thought is, if I had to make a guess where things went the most wrong or it started to go wrong, this buyer agent probably didn't go over what waiving the appraisal meant to their client. And the whole thing about being a good real estate agent, setting proper expectations. We've talked about that before. You have to set proper expectations. And if you're working with the real estate agent who's not going over the contract with you, that's a big red flag. They need to be going over the contract with you and explaining what everything means and what the consequences could be. Not necessarily what they will be, but what they could be.
Yeah, an educated client is very important to this circumstance. The agent not only has to be able to convey the information, the buyer has to be willing to receive it. I can tell you, invariably it happens. I hear these. Jay, I went over it. We discussed this. They asked questions. I gave them answers, and that goes in one ear and out the other because the people are in a tense emotional position, and just they don't recall the information quite as well as they probably should. But there's also some bad realtors out there that never go through it, or that allow the client to speed them through it because the client doesn't want all the gory details.
Yeah, there's probably a lot more to this story that we're not getting. So who knows what's really going on in it. But we're going to cut to a couple ads here, and we'll be back on the Jay Pitts Show, Talk Radio 1080, Real News, Real Talk. Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show, Talk Radio 1080. I'm your co-host, Ryan Harris, sitting down with Jay Pitts. All right, Jay, we're going to get into something everybody's heard about by now, but probably can't get enough, and that's talking about the Silicon Valley bank collapse. Everybody has their theories, but let's start off with it going. Actually, I want to get your thoughts on the Silicon Valley bank collapse before I do anything else.
I don't. I waver. I go back and forth. I do understand the government's, specifically the federal government's, business of ensuring safe and solvent banking, right? And then part of me wants to say, okay, yeah, backstop the depositors, make sure that there's not a run on banks. And it's just like, it feels to me like our economy has become so large and unruly. It's really hard. Like, do we have room for conspiracy theories in this conversation? Because I heard one that, frankly, makes me embarrassed at how plausible it seems. Right. So you're involved in the startup space. We'll get back on topic here in just a moment. But let for a moment,
let's hear it.
Offer me some latitude. So in the startup space, we know that the last number of years, a lot of loose money. Right? A lot of loose money in everything. But startups were the beneficiary of a lot of that, right? A lot that are not very valuable anymore. Okay. So a big part of SVB's portfolio, right, was deposits from and loans to the Silicon Valley kind of startup space. A lot of those entities, right, are, not as valuable as they were thought to be, right? A short year, 18 months ago. Okay. I heard that it's a possibility that there was collusion amongst some of these startups to crash the bank, because the way that the Fed would backstop the bank itself and the depositors and all of those things essentially amounted to a greater valuation of these entities than they could find on the open market, or that they could hope reasonably to find on the open market soon. Now, without getting into a whole lot of that, right, essentially the Fed collateralized a lot of the bank's holdings, and they have to provide a value. That value is potable, right? You can sell that. So these companies continue to operate based on an assumed valuation now that, when a startup is not raising and not generating revenue, how do you value them? When they can't raise and they don't have revenue, how do you value them other than the assets that they hold, right? I mean, if it's, I mean, you could put a value on their intellectual capital and, all these things. But like, for a moment, I thought, God, that sounds really crazy. But I can almost kind of see it. I hope it's not the case. I think it's probably not. But if it isn't, trust me, somebody's thought about it. You know what I mean? And the means to do it, if you think about Wall Street bets and, Reddit and the way that individuals grabbed a hold of the stock market and forced prices on certain meme stocks a short while ago, I mean, it almost seems possible. Prior to that, I would have said never. No way. But Redditors can, essentially pump a stock to like 1,800% increase in a matter of minutes or hours or whatever it was. Like, kind of crazy, man. Anyway, I'd love your thoughts. I don't want to steal the whole segment, but I would love your thoughts on that, just to being in the startup space.
Definitely plausible, everything you just said. The only thing that makes me skeptical on that is there were some very massive companies there that do have real value.
Yeah.
I mean, Roku, Etsy, massive companies.
Couldn't they have been victim to? Because, like, the way I understand, SVB was teetering, right? They've got great shareholders. They've got great, account holders, depositors, real businesses. But they were pretty exposed to pre-revenue startups, right? A lot of money invested, a lot of money out.
No, yeah, for sure. And it didn't just affect companies out there. I mean, there were Louisville companies affected by this.
Yeah.
I have friends in the startup community who work for companies out there who were affected by this that didn't know if they were going to be paid on Monday or Tuesday following that weekend.
Yeah.
So it was very scary for their companies that were actually doing well. Like, what's going to happen after this? What are we going to do? They had no idea, didn't know what was going on. But what I want to bring to attention is, there's all kinds of theories on how this happened or why it happened. But what I think's the most important thing to pay attention to is how fast it happened.
Yeah.
It was the fastest bank run in the history of the United States. So it started on March 8th, and the bank was closed on March 10th. So 48 hours, and the bank's done, closed. Obviously, they got bailed out. But why it's so important is this can happen. I don't want to raise a red flag or an alarm or anything like that, but it is very important to think about if it can happen to this massive bank that's been around for 40 plus years in 48 hours. I mean, it really could happen to any bank.
Yeah. It can happen anywhere. I mean, trust me, I lived through the days of coming into the office at a mortgage company, and due to lack of liquidity, there being chains on the doors. Like, that happened, not to the company I worked for, but a competitor that was right up the road. I got the phone call from those loan officers saying, "Hey, are you guys hiring?" When they parked in the same parking spot that they always parked in and walked up and found chains and padlocks on their doors.
I'm glad he brought that up, because now they can't put chains on the doors, and that's why this happens so fast.
Yeah.
It's two things. Social media communication moves as fast as you want it to now.
Absolutely.
So you can reach thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of people instantly, and you can get on your bank app and send money to another bank if you're worried about that one bank you're in. So really the chains now are not allowing people to send money, which you can argue, is that money even yours in your account that you're sending to another account? Are they just numbers? It's a lot to consider, but it's those two things that made this happen so fast, because they can't just go throw chains on a bank door anymore.
No. Well, they can't. And dude, I'll admit, I'm sitting in my bedroom on Sunday evening when that weekend that all this transpired, right? I don't know that I'm pretty sure I've got the dates right. Like, the 10th was the Monday morning that it went into receivership, and the 8th was...
So everything started on the 8th. That's when SVB announced it had raised $500 million from General Atlantic and planned for a $1.25 billion common stock sale plus another $500 million of depository shares, and that's when the ball started rolling.
Yeah, it was Monday the 13th. So Sunday the 12th, I'm sitting in my bedroom, right, on Sunday night, watching the, Sunday night show. This is what us boring, people with young kids do. And, my wife's watching the show. I think it was the Last of Us finale, actually, and I'm not even paying attention.
This is really off topic, but there was a few nights ago, I texted Jay at 3 a.m. because I had an idea for the show. I was just up, and if I wake up in the middle of the night, I can't go back to sleep. I texted Jay an idea for the show just so I wouldn't forget it. Responds later, goes, dude, a little early to be working. And then it came back to, he said, well, you won't be like that when you have kids.
No, for sure. It's on its way. I was up at 6, by the way. So I'm sitting there on that Sunday night and thinking to myself, like, do I need to go to the bank tomorrow morning? And, that was around the time the Fed kind of announced and the tweets came out. I'm literally on Twitter just.
I spam Jay with this stuff too, so I was probably adding to the should I go to the bank?
Should I go to the bank in the morning and withdraw everything I got? No, I mean, because every bank, if you're not working with Chase, B of A, Wells, everybody's a regional bank. It can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter how. I mean, like enough panic, like the way that our banking system, it runs on confidence. Let's just be honest. Lack of confidence equals crash. So I'm thinking, is there going to be lines at the bank tomorrow morning? I won't say what local institution I would have went by, but I literally dropped my kids off. You know me. I go to the gym in the morning. I drop my kids off. On the way to the gym, I drove a different route to drive by the branch that we typically bank at to make sure that there weren't lines forming. And then I went ahead and said, you're crazy. I went to the gym. But that's even after they came out and said they were bailing. Because here's the thing. Even if you have less than the FDIC limit,
doesn't really mean anything.
They
don't have the money.
They don't have the money. You're waiting for the Fed. Or how long am I going to wait for the Fed to give me my money back so that I can make payroll next week? You know what I mean? So like you gotta don't tell me that it's okay because it's insured. Like you will lose employees, you will lose agents, you will lose people, you will lose clients. I mean, what?
Did you see the new CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, what he did?
I did not.
All right. So after they were bailed out, they started using marketing tactics that said they started calling Silicon Valley Bank the safest bank in America because they're 100% FDIC insured. They used getting bailed out and then turned it into marketing material, calling it the safest bank you can use.
Oh, so cringy. That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
I mean, somebody was sitting in a room and thought that was a good idea.
At least he wasn't the one.
But it might be true.
It probably is true, but you can't say it out loud. You can't say it out loud now.
I think it's a little too early to say it out loud.
The truth is I think every bank is 100% FDIC insured now.
They said no so far.
You just wait. They said no because they didn't have a wave.
Yeah.
They did not have a wave of bank crashes. But like every regional, man, I mean, like there are 4 or 5 major banks that are probably not disrupted, not affected by this. It'll have to go wide and deep to catch them. But like name a local institution. I mean, even regionals, like banks that you think are pretty big are not that big. Like banks that have big brands, they're available only in a quarter of the country, right? It's Wells, Chase, Bank of America are pretty much the only ones that exist anymore, that are large enough to be insulated as consumer-facing institutions.
Yeah, which has its own conspiracy thing about it too. But like normal, we didn't get to everything we wanted to talk about in this segment, but we'll cut to a couple ads, and we will be back on the Jay Pitt Show, Talk Radio 1080, Real News, Real Talk.
Welcome back, folks, to the Jay Pitt Show, Talk Radio 1080. I think segment number 3. The number of the segment really doesn't matter.
Do people even know what the segments are?
No, it's just, it is just our
I think it keeps us on track.
Our personal internal method of organization. But, I think they've listened to enough radio to know that there are segments, air quotes, right? We masquerade as radio hosts, folks. We're really real estate people and startup founders, but I digress. So let's talk politics as much as I hate it. What do you think?
Let's do it real quick.
Okay.
Because it is pretty big news.
Yeah, then we can talk about
basketball. You want to read it? You want me to go?
No, go ahead. Lay it out.
All right. So From Axios, President Biden on Monday vetoed a bill that would have repealed a Department of Labor rule allowing retirement fund managers to consider environment, social, and governance principles in their investment decisions. So ESG for short, which is what everybody understands it as.
For sure. Well, you said something earlier, like everybody has heard about SVB. To be honest, I don't know that everybody has, just simply because a lot of people purposely insulate themselves from almost any news.
That's probably true.
I know some very intelligent, very successful people that want no part of it. They live in a bubble. And it's not an echo chamber.
I actually know a lot of people that would be like that if I wasn't sending them things.
This is also true. I just, it's funny. I don't know that anybody knows about this. I think it makes sense, by and large, as of, if you don't follow politics, Biden's party has controlled all three branches, or not all three branches, but all three chambers, or both chambers in the Senate, and then the presidency, lawmaking wise. So he hasn't had to veto a lot of legislation. There's no legislation has made it to him that he has disagreed with. This was a seemingly bipartisan bill. Now, you could argue that it was, Democrats from West Virginia and Montana that were the sponsors of this bill. Those are places that tend to be more conservative, specifically West Virginia. Joe Manchin has been in the news quite a bit, as kind of standing kind of in the breach, if you will, against some things that Biden has tried to accomplish during his presidency. And this is no different, right? He represents a state that is big on coal mining. It is their chief industry. So it stands to reason, right, despite even the advent of clean coal, which some people would malign and say it's not actually clean. Everything I've read seems to be, but, I know there's reason for opposition. But, yeah, Manchin wants to repeal the necessity that retirement fund managers focus on ESG when making selections and recommendations to their clients, and Biden vetoed it. So,
yeah, and the reason it's brought up the most, it was Biden's first use of the veto since becoming president.
Yep.
So that's newsworthy. Said he vetoed the bill because it jeopardizes the hard-earned life savings of cops, firefighters, teachers, and other workers. Of course, you can find things out there. Harvard Business Review, investing in sustainable funds that prioritize ESG goals is supposed to help improve the environment and social sustainability of business practices. Unfortunately, close analysis suggests that it's not only making much difference to companies, but it's not making much difference to how much profit they have.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when any time in business, when you focus on a purpose, when you make a purpose primary other than success, whatever that business may be, profitability, anytime you make a choice based on factors other than that, it calls into question whether or not you're making the right decisions. Are you an appropriate steward of the resources that you're given? Whether you're a shareholder, whether you're a fund manager, whether you're a financial planner, that kind of thing. Whether you're the CEO of a company and you have to, you have squarely on your shoulders the ability to provide a workplace for individuals to earn a living that then go home and support their family with those funds. That's hard. Here's the thing. I find in politics, and this is my biggest pet peeve of politics, both sides alike, right? Frankly, it's unfortunate that there are only two sides. But on both sides, there's an unfalsifiability that exists in almost every argument. Okay, of course, President Biden, we don't want to jeopardize the hard-earned retirement funds of firefighters and police officers and municipal workers. Obviously, who's going to argue with that?
Yeah.
Well, it's why he said it, because nobody can argue with that. But it's the premise that's the problem. The premise is if you pass this bill, it absolutely does that. I don't know that that's true. Okay, yeah. I can see when you make the assumption that we're moving towards clean energy, that priorities should be placed accordingly. I don't know that solar is the right answer. I don't know that wind is the right answer. I think those are the preferred methods of sustainable energy of one particular party, right? Whereas the other party still prefers fossil fuels. Okay, it is undeniable to me that fossil fuels do change the environment. The environment is something that is incredibly complex. I think it's undoubtedly, increasing the average temperature on the planet. Whether the planet can heal from that, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't think our scientists know. I think it's too complex for anyone to understand. We're undoubtedly moving towards electric, which in and of itself is clean to use. It's just still not clean to produce.
Yeah.
You can't produce electricity efficiently enough to be our primary source of power without fossil fuels. So we've got to figure that out. And when we do, I think we'll be free of fossil fuel, but we're not there yet. And what you end up seeing is, in order to get anything accomplished in Washington, you have to be an extreme anymore. And that's really sad.
Yeah. All right. Let's transition from something everybody hates for the most part to
hopefully
something I think most people love, which is sports. So really big switch up here.
Did you hear the upswing in his voice? He's not quite sure about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the World Baseball Classic first. That was awesome.
Dude, I'm a baseball guy, so it is. I was geeked. And I loved the fact
it was
that
poetry how it ended.
It was,
other than the United States not winning.
I frankly love that we didn't dominate. Truthfully,
yeah.
The dream team in basketball. There's no competition.
We didn't have our best players.
No, we didn't. We didn't have them all.
I got a feeling the next one though, everybody's going to play.
Well, that's what happens. The U.S. goes and loses in the Ryder Cup, and then they load up, and everybody come back.
The dream team
come back and dominate. Yeah, the dream team, the advent of the dream team. In Olympic basketball, I really enjoyed it. Shohei Ohtani to be a two-way player, which is something you normally say in football, not in basketball, not in baseball. To throw 100 and hit third. What? And to strike out the best, probably, I would call, I don't know that he is the best player in the game in Mike Trout, but he has been the gold standard for a decade or more.
And they're on the same team, and they'll probably only win 80 games this year.
It's so weird. That's the business of baseball, though, that does that. But, Shohei is special.
They said, so 97% of TVs that were on in Japan were watching the game, and it was 8:30 there in the morning.
God, it's wild. Were they watching it at work? Is that everybody blessed them to turn the TV on at work? Because I don't think they're a work culture. Those corporate culture, is widely understood in Japan. Corporate culture is intense. So I don't know. You know who else is a dog? Absolute dog is Trey Turner. That dude is unreal.
Awesome.
I love Trey Turner. Anyway, I would have loved to see him.
Why do you think there were so many solo home runs? You think it's a mental?
I think there is a mental thing when you're at the plate with nobody on that you're trying to get something started.
Just worrying about yourself.
You're a little extra aggressive with nobody on. You know that the rally starts with you, right? And if you're not a small ball player, you're not, squaring to bunt and trying to leg one out. You can let loose.
I tell you what, the guys from Japan, they were hitting the ball hard.
There's a couple of names that you will absolutely. They had another guy throwing 100.
20-year-old struck out Mike Trout.
Dude, it's going to be something. It's going to be something real soon. But the Japanese have always played great baseball. They've got the most profitable professional baseball league in the world outside of the United States.
I believe it.
So,
I would watch.
Yeah, and there's some pedigree too. They've got. I don't know that they have Hall of Famers, but there's some perennial all-stars that have come out of Japan. So good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realize too. They were talking on that during the game about Ohtani, and is he the next Babe Ruth? Yada yada. And it said, well, Babe Ruth only played both ways for 2 years, and Ohtani's already done it for 3 years.
He wasn't even that good of a pitcher, just to be honest. He was a slugger. Let's just be real.
Yeah,
you can't compare the era. I hear this argument made, LeBron v. Jordan. That I think is bunk, but you cannot You cannot
Let's
compare
bring the movie Sandlot into this too. If Sandlot was never produced and wasn't as big as it was, Babe Ruth's name probably wouldn't be where it is today.
It's kind of crazy.
This is coming from me, a guy who's 27, and I grew up watching Sandlot, though.
Sandlot was a good movie. It was a great movie. My kids love it. My son loves it. Yeah, the great Hambino, right? Like
They had like 18 names for him.
yeah, that's right. So it was a thing. But Hank Aaron had already broken his record probably 15 years, 20 years before that movie was made. So Hank, Hammer and Hank is the one that we should be talking about.
I don't know who. I got you. Okay.
I would say, hold on, stop. All right, we got to go to commercial after that one. No, seriously, we're out of time for this segment. We're going to let you hear from some of our sponsors. We will come right back, wrap up this episode. This is the Jay Pitt Show on Talk Radio 1080.
Welcome back to the Jay Pitt Show. I'm your co-host Ryan Harris. Talk Radio 1080, real news, real talk. All right, we're back. I want to clarify something very quickly. I absolutely know who Hank Aaron is. I did not know the nickname. What'd you say, Hammering Hank?
It's Hammering Hank, man.
All right, I just need to clarify that.
All right. Do you know who the Sultan of SWAT is from your old school movie days?
God, you're putting me on the spot.
That's Babe.
Babe
man.
Ruth,
It's
right?
Babe Ruth.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. But
The Sultan of SWAT. So
the obvious answer isn't always the answer.
So when Smalls comes into that and when he doesn't know who Babe Ruth is, I'm not going to do that to you. They go around and every kid throws out a nickname for Babe Ruth. And the Sultan, the Colossus of Clout. Yeah, dude, there's so many.
Have your kid? I guess you've probably had your son Peyton watch that so far, right?
Dude, we've watched them all. We've watched them all. Like any sports movie. So Preston is so much older than his brothers and sisters that we've gone through all the old kid movies pretty quickly because he won't sit through like the little kid movies.
It's crazy how much Preston's grown up over the last few years.
Yeah, he's a mess.
Because I've been around last 5 years. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he doubled in age. Yeah. They do that.
Yeah.
They do that. Which I was looking at pictures of Colton the other day, and it blows my mind. That kid is like literally a foot taller than every kid in his class. I digress. All right, so what we got for the rest of the episode, Ryan?
All right, let's talk about so your team does this thing called $1 Million Month Club.
Yep.
So explain what that is real quick. I'm going to challenge you under a minute. Explain what the $1 Million Month Club is.
Okay, well, first, I will tell you, it should be said that Ryan came up with this idea. So
we'll get into that.
I'll give him the credit.
Yeah.
All right. He's coming back to it. So the $1 Million Month Club is basically something that we created to give the agents recognition for their production. Now, specifically to us, that it doesn't really get put out to the public, is that is pending sales for a month's time. So it's designed, we have something called a sales funnel, right? You got the top of the funnel is the, beginning of the process. The bottom of the funnel is the closing table. So we want, certain key performance indicators to be celebrated. Pending transactions is predictive of success. So we want to always be putting new properties under contract, putting new clients under contract to move toward closing. That ensures that we best serve our clients and hit our goals at the same time. So the $1 Million Month Club is when you penned $1 million worth of real estate in a 30-day time span, a calendar month.
Which, used to be hard.
It used to be a lot harder than it is now.
But
it's still not easy. Okay, if you think about this, if you do 3 average price listings of 350, so the market average is about 350, the median's slightly lower and of like the 270 range. If you do 3 average price listings in a month, that gets it. Okay, if all 3 of those close, great. That puts you towards close to a $12 million year in sales, which is a phenomenal year.
yeah, unreal.
So, and most agents close 8 to 10 homes a year, right? Full-time successful agents close 8 to 10 homes a year. So they put you at like 3x their production. So yeah, absolutely, it's something to strive for still, but not every agent hits it every month, but most agents on our team hit it every few months.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring it up, because I think it's really awesome. But one, yes, I started posting about it first. So I would just share on Instagram story and social media, just put 1.3 million pending in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then turned into $1 Million Month Club, But what I want everybody out there to hear is when we record these shows, we also film them and put them out on social media.
Yeah.
And the real estate network of agents is pretty tight knit, and everybody sees the videos. I want it to be known, $1 Million a Month Club, that's spread across the United States among real estate teams. I mean, you see it everywhere.
Started right here.
Started in Louisville with Jay Pitt's team.
This is also true. It's probably, I was going to say this, but you only gave me a minute. So it's probably our most copied. And they say, I'm going to
look right in the camera. It started in Louisville.
Right here. That's copying someone is a sincere form of flattery. So it has been imitated often. It has been imitated locally by a number of other firms, no names being provided, but a number of firms have copied us locally with that. And I think that it's just because they saw that agents like to be recognized. You know, it's that old adage in management or leadership that you scold in private and praise in public, right? So what more public forum do we have than social media? Agents pay attention. I can tell you, if I opened up my Instagram right now, the first 15 people in stories would be real estate agents. Everything in my feed is a real estate agent. We pay attention to what each other post. Probably me less so than most, except for the fact that I have to amplify my agent's messaging and the things that they put out. So that's really what leads to it. I really don't, watch what other agents and brokers do unless I have a need. I'll go search for it, and I have a few people that I follow that we were talking about one of them just a bit earlier with like a studio with 9 screens, a guy named Byron Lazine, who's a very, very
crushing it.
Yeah, he's absolutely great. He's got a team in Florida and a team in New Jersey. Awesome. Or is it Connecticut? I don't know. I always forget. But anyway, great dude.
Yeah,
great dude.
No, it's been cool to see that go everywhere, and it's something so easy for. Yeah, I think the reason agents love it is shared on social media in a click of a button. So, yeah, really cool.
Yep.
All right, to end here, so I'm blown away. You built, in an era of work from home, remote work, or even in the real estate world, talk about cloud brokerages like EXP or just some of these other cloud-based brokerages where there's not necessarily a designated office. It's been pretty amazing to watch you build a brokerage where there's always agents there. Agents actually want to come to the office, and I mean, you can just there's energy in the office. I think there's a lot of brokerages that don't have that right now. So how were you able to build that?
That's a great question. How? I don't know. It was incremental for sure. Really, I think it started by just like the core group of people that were there in the beginning just really kind of enjoyed being around each other. So they would tend to stay in the office. Were also pretty credible individuals. So the new agents, which we made the strategic decision to grow with new to the industry real estate agents, young professionals. We don't care how old you are, but like if you're young at heart, it just so happens that most of ours are young in age as well. But if you're young at heart, you got a home with us.
But that even contradicts young agents. Like young people are the ones driving the remote work right now.
Exactly. But what you can see is that they crave community. And if they don't get it elsewhere, there's nothing that says they can't get it at work. They're just not used to getting it at work, right? A lot of our people, their best friends work with us now, or their coworkers have become their best friends. That's a big part of it. Collaborative training, giving everybody a voice was part of it. Our Friday roundtables, our Wednesday tactical trainings, our Monday meetings, we make it a point to make all of these things very collaborative and participatory, and everybody gets a voice, right? So if you got a question, some people are still afraid to raise their hand. I mean, it is what it is. But, we give them a voice by letting other people that have the same concerns raise their hand. That's part of it. I mean, down to the office space, man. We rented for the first 5 years, and so we had limited control over what the space looked like, but we always prioritized like a lot of natural light. If you go through our office now, it's light and bright. We upgraded the lighting to LED, so it's like everything is bright. The windows are always, the shades are always pulled back and the blinds are always open. Like we want a lot of light and bright feeling. And And then just surround yourself with people that care, right? I mean, like I talked about early this year in our retreat that, hard work works, and it absolutely is incontrovertible that the people that come to the office more have more success. And so I saw some eyeballs, right? Like go wide when I said that, some realization occurring. Because, yeah, there are still people that think, oh, well, I don't need to go to the office. And they thought, well, something's missing in my business. Maybe I should. And so they go there and they get around people that inspire them and they get inspired. So all those things, I know there's not really a cohesive answer to that, but I suppose the concise answer is make the office a place where people want to go. It's not on them, it's on me.
Right. I think it helps too when you help the agents realize, hey, you're running a business. You're not W-2. Like, I said earlier, it's young people driving the remote work trend, but that's young people who are working W-2 jobs that come in and have a set schedule, things to do each day, completely opposite of being a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And actually, you'll have no clue how to be a real estate agent or a realtor if you don't come in the office and learn from other agents. So I think that's a massive thing too, is new agents, young agents, come in here, listen to other people, come to the meetings. You need energy around you because it's a hard business. So if you do come to the office, it makes complete sense that you do perform better than those that don't.
Well, just think about this one distinction. How much better do you perform at something that you choose to do versus something that you're made to do? Right? So the W-2 person is required to do, whether it's work from home, remote work, on location, work in an office. They're required to do that. These people are self-employed. They make this choice. They make the choice whether to get in the car and drive to the office or not. I make it very clear. Attendance is not mandatory. Okay? It's tracked. Okay? Let's be honest, because I'm a data nerd. It's tracked, but it's not mandatory. You're a professional. Whether you choose to be here or not is completely your decision. It's also my decision whether to keep you. So show up and have success. But, our number one agent, Simba just featured Emily, right? 3 years in a row. She doesn't come to the office a lot. She comes for the meetings sometimes, right? She stays productive where she is. That works for her. Great. Love it.
It's probably too because she's out selling homes 90% of the day, but
also true.
But no, good show. Talked about, we covered sports, politics, bank collapses.
Oh, wow.
Real estate. We talked about sharing something across the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you want to take us out?
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening here. This is the Jay Pitts Show for Ryan Harris. I am Jay Pitts, Talk Radio 1080, real news, real talk, and real estate.